Hi, this is Julie Harland, and I'm your Math Gal. Please visit my website at yourmathgal.com, where you could search for any of my videos organized by topic. This is part one of basic percent problems, and we do the following 5 problems on this video. We're going to go over basic percent problems, something like this. Find 75% of 44. This means you're trying to find a certain percent of a number, and usually when you see this of next to a number, it means you're going to multiply the percent times that number. Once in a while, of will be used in a different context, but in percent problems, usually it means you're going to take the percent and multiply times 44. So the of is almost like a times sign. So what we're looking for is 75% times 44, and that's not an x, that's a times. But in order to do multiplication with percents, we need to rewrite that percent either as a fraction or a decimal. So there's 2 ways of doing this. You can write 75% as a decimal, 0.75, and then multiply it by 44. Or you could write 75% as a fraction. Now 75% as a fraction, remember, 75% means 75 hundredths. So you could write 75 hundredths, or you could reduce it first to 3/4. It's up to you if you want to leave it as 75 hundredths or you want to write it as 3/4 times 44. And I'm going to write that as 44 over 1. So you can see a fraction times another fraction. Now, if you would have left this as 75 100ths, that would have been fine. Eventually, you would hopefully reduce it. Okay, now if you're looking over here on the left with the decimals, you could do your multiplication longhand, or you could get out a calculator to get your answer. I actually like doing it with fractions. That's easier for me because I don't have to look for a calculator. So I'm going to do it that way. I'm going to cancel. 4 goes into 4 once and into 44 11 times. So I have for my answer 3 times 11, which is 33 over 1. But 33 over 1 is just 33. So 33 is 75% of 44. Now, if you got your calculator out and you did 0.75 times 44, you're going to get the answer of 33. So it doesn't matter which way you work it, you should get the answer of 33. So this is a certain kind of percent problem where you're given the percent and it says of some number. It might be written slightly differently. For instance, instead of saying find 120% of 75, it might say what is 120% of 75. And we do the same thing. We have the percent and it says of 75. That means you're going to multiply times 25. So what I'm looking for is 120% times 75. Now notice this is more than 100%, so the answer will be bigger than the number 75. So let's go ahead and work this out. We can either change this to a decimal or a fraction. Okay. So if we want to change 120% to a decimal, remember to get rid of the percent sign, that means divide by 100, you move the decimal 2 to the left. So that'll be 1.2 times 75. If you're going to do it in terms of fractions, you can change 120% to a fraction by doing first 120 over 100 and then reducing that. You don't have to reduce first, I just find it easier. So if I reduce that, the 2 zeros I could cancel off because that's like dividing by 10, and then if I divide the top and bottom by 2, I have 6/5. So 120% written as a fraction then is 6/5 times 75 over 1. So we're not doing 120 times 75, we're doing 6/5 or 1.2 times 75. We have to remember to rewrite the percent as either a decimal or a fraction before I multiply. All right, now I like doing it with the fractions because I'm pretty good at canceling here. 5 goes into 75 15 times. So I'm going to cancel. And that will give me 6 times 15 over 1, which will just be 90 over 1 or 90. If you get out your calculator or you do it longhand, you do 1.2 times 75, you'll also get 90. If you don't have a calculator, let's just quickly go over how to multiply. Remember, you just do regular multiplication. It's like 75 times 12. So we would do this. And then because there's only one number after the decimal point, we move the decimal in 1 and I would get 90. So you would get 90 whether you did it long way, regular multiplication, you got it at a calculator, or you did it with a fraction. Now, if you like to write it as an algebraic equation, when you see what is 100%, 120% of 75, some people like to say, well, what? That's what I don't know, and they'll just call that x or n, and the is represents an equal sign. And they say, oh, I'm looking for x, and instead of just doing 120% times 75, the whole way through you could be writing x equals, and at the end you'd write x equals 90. But notice that if you do that, you're the one who introduced this variable x. So at the end, you don't really want to write x equals 90. You would want to write the number is 90. So you could either write just the number 90, or you could say the number is 90. All right, let's try another one. What number is 9 1/11% of 88? Well, this one is slightly different because I have 9 1/11%. You cannot write that as a decimal without rounding. So our only choice here is to rewrite 9 1/11% as a fraction. So let's go over on the side and remember how to do that. 9 1/11% means 9 1/11 divided by 100. Right? The percent sign means out of 100, so this means divided by 100. So how do I do a mixed number divided by 100? I first need to change that mixed number to an improper fraction. So 11 times 9 plus 1 is 100 11ths. And how do I deal with this divide by 100? That's the same thing as multiply by the reciprocal, which is 1 over 100. Well, this is nice and convenient. The hundreds cancel, right? So my answer ends up being 1/11. Now, all I've done here is rewrite 9 1/11% as a reduced fraction. And that's what I'm going to do to finish the problem here. 9 1/11% I can now write as 1/11 times 88, which I'm going to write as 88 over 1. And if possible, it's always easier to cancel, and I can do that here. So I get 8 over 1, which is just the number 8. Now in all of these problems, you can see if your answer seems to make sense. 9 1/11% of 88, well, that's like, maybe like 10% of 90. 10% of 90 is 9, so we're in the ballpark. You want to see if your answer is in the ballpark. And again, if you want, you can always write n equals. For the what number, you could write n equals 1/11 times 88. But in general, if you're just looking for a percentage of the number, if you know what the percent is and you know you've got what the number is after the word of, you just are multiplying after you change that percent to either a decimal or a fraction. Not every problem comes out so nice and tidy where we're just going to have, a fraction that it's easy to reduce and we'll be able to just use our, be able to multiply and get a whole number for the answer. So here's an example like that. What is 47% of 29? Well, you could change this to a fraction, but it doesn't really make it any easier because when you have 47 over 100, that 100 won't cancel into the 29. So in this case, it's probably easier to just go ahead and write 47% as a decimal, 0.47 times 29. And then, of course, you could do that longhand, or you can get out a calculator. You're going to do 0.47 times 29, and that will give you 13.63. So that's what we're looking for. Now let's see if we're in the ballpark. 47% is about a little bit less than 50%, right? And if I'm estimating it, so 50% is half. So the question is half of 29. Well, might think of that as half of 28, pretty close. 14. So the question is this: is 13.63 in the ballpark of 14? And yes. What you're basically looking for is when you're doing that little estimation is, are you kind of close to the answer? In other words, if you had something like 136, you're way off, and you could probably figure out it had something to do with your decimal point. Here's one last one. How about you trying this? And I recommend you use a calculator for this problem. Although if you don't have one, you're just going to get practice your multiplication with decimals. All right, so we're going to have to change 4.23% to either a fraction or a decimal, and I think the decimal is going to be the easy one, 0.0423. And of 96.8 means we're going to multiply by 96.8. So what do we get for our answer here? You just put that in the calculator. You should get 4.09464. So sometimes you definitely want to use your calculator to do the multiplication. Please visit my website at yourmathgal.com, where you can view all of my videos, which are organized by topic.